because out of its own nature, it creates everything.
People listen to us right now and hear this conversation, and some people, I think, will go into a deep trance and go, what was he talking about?
Well, maybe they'll get out of their trance.
Yeah, maybe they will. Maybe it'll wake up the trance. But I think we have to be able to stretch people's perceptions. Let's talk about something people are probably equally afraid of, or at least society is right now. Let's talk about AIDS. You know, you look at AIDS and the majority of people in the population see this as something that if they were to all of a sudden take a blood test, which as you and I both know does not test whether they even have an AIDS virus. It tests whether or not they've had antibodies that have been linked to that.
It's a nocebo.
Exactly. But we're talking about a situation now in our culture where it's being promoted as the plague that's going to destroy our society. It's begun to cause people to link to the act of making love with somebody they care about. Could be something that could kill them. This is what children are beginning to learn. I interviewed Dr. Duesberg. I don't know if you're familiar with him, from UC Berkeley. And he, you know, as you know, is one of the co-discoverers of inconogens. And he said that, you know, HIV is not the source of AIDS, and he's attacking all over the country, and he's pretty well qualified to do so.
Yeah, HIV is maybe a precipitating agent in a susceptible host. The material agent is never the cause of the disease. It may be the final factor in inducing the full-blown syndrome in somebody who's already susceptible.
But what made them susceptible?
Their own interpretations of the whole reality that they're participating in.
Could that be translated into their thoughts, their feelings, their beliefs, their lifestyle?
Absolutely.
It's not just as simple as
In fact, we have a lot of patients, I have a lot of patients with so-called AIDS, this label that we've given them, that are healthier than most of the population that's living in downtown Boston. They haven't had a cold in 10 years.
Yes, but somebody's told them they have this disease.
Somebody's told them.
And they've bought into it in some cases.
Yeah, and the label is not the disease. The test is not the disease.
Well, talking to Duesberg, he said that physiologically, biochemically, all the HIV virus could ever do, or has ever been proven to do, is wipe out one out of every, I think it was 10,000 T helper cells.
That's right. And
how often are we, you know, being able to
facilitating that process through our own thoughts, beliefs, emotions, ideas, and interpretations?
From what he told me, we replace more of that in a day than they could ever be destroyed.
Absolutely,
and that's what he's promoting all over the country. Yet we've got a test out there that doesn't even test for the virus, that couldn't wipe out that many cells in the first place.
Right.
And people are accepting this, and when they accept it, what happens to them?
Well, when they accept it, then they make it happen. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Maybe they go take something like AZT, a side effect of which is immune suppression.
Also, yes. I mean, the implications of this are enormous, mind-boggling, and frightening.
Well, this kind of conversation, some people can listen to it. I'm sure even some people in the medical profession say, these guys are off their rocker. They could say that about me. It'd be pretty hard about you, although I'm sure they could push it.
Yeah.
What keeps us locked into this trap? What keeps us locked in this trap where we keep promoting a philosophy of fear where we must depend upon something or someone outside of ourselves to keep ourselves healthy?
It's a collective belief system. It's the hypnosis of social conditioning. It's cultural, religious, social indoctrination. And it's a trap, as you said. It's a real trap because usually when you're in a prison, you can at least see the bars. In this case, you can't even see the bars. Psychologists call this phenomenon premature cognitive commitment. Because you make it prematurely, it's not true. Cognitive, because it shapes your perceptual reality, so you hold it to be true. And commitment, you're locked into it.
So what's the way out of the trap? Awareness?
Yeah, ultimately unbounded awareness, so that you realize that you are the field of all possibilities, that you have the ability to create anything. It's really that you are the magician behind the trick, that you are the creator behind the creation, to curve back within myself and keep creating, to know that you have to expand your awareness, yes.
What would you say to somebody like, my personal belief and my experience, rightly or wrongly, that I've seen through time, is that probably the greatest tool of influence is what I call social proof. That is, when people are uncertain as to what to do, they look around to see what other people are doing to decide. And we look around our society and we see a very unhealthy population. We see a population where 1 in 2 people are dying of heart disease, 1 in 3 are getting cancer. Certainly there are certain lifestyles that people have adopted that have made that happen, both physiologically, dietary, exercise, stress, thought process, all of these things together, a lack of happiness. But we see this being propagated, I think, by examples of people that influence us. We look at a person like Magic Johnson, phenomenal ball player, young man. He had no symptoms at all. He went to go get a life insurance policy, which is part of what he's doing to protect his financial background, and he takes a test that I was just reading in the Congress Office of Technology Assessment. Dr. Larry Mike says that 9 and 10 times the test where it says you got a positive finding is wrong if you're a heterosexual. By the way, they say it's 10% of the time it's wrong if it says that you're okay and you're homosexual. I can't quite figure those statistics out, but here we've got a situation where he feels fine.
If he is in fact a heterosexual, and I think he is,
yes,
then the statistical likelihood of that is almost of his having the disease,
yes,
is just impossible, almost impossible. If you knew how difficult,
yes,
it is for this virus to infect a male in the situations that we're talking about,
yes,
it just doesn't make any sense at all. And the test is, it's just
a Western blot test.
Yeah, it's a test. It could be false positive. In fact, most of them are.
I would agree with you. Let me bring you back to AIDS one more time. My focus on it is only because it's in the headlines every day, and I think it's a great metaphor. Going back to somebody like a Magic Johnson, they convinced him, of course, to take AZT, which, you know...
Horrible travesty.
What does AZT do to the body?
AZTs will destroy the immune system even more. And in fact, it causes all kinds of side effects. And there are statistics now that show beyond a shadow of doubt that AZT does nothing to the long-term morbidity or mortality of the disease.
In the very beginning, it was passed after only being used for, was it 3 or 4 months initially?
Right. Wow.
It was like, you know, tossing a coin for a short period of time.
There's a lot of money involved in all this.
This is true. Also, I read recently that in terms of AIDS that I was reading an article and they were talking about that if you've ever had any kind of shot that had gamma globulin in it, that you will come up very easily. You can come up with...
Oh, lots of false positives.
Yes.
False, not just gamma globulin. There are all kinds of antigens that are out there in the environment that can induce a false positive. In fact, I have a person, which I will not identify right now, who has held the world record for swimming and continues to hold it periodically, who has the same positive test but doesn't have the disease.
Now, in the very beginning, they said, well, this was what always fascinated me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any disease where if you have the antibodies, it means you have the disease up until AIDS. I mean, the fact that you have antibodies should be showing that the body is doing its job, should it not?
All it means is that you've been exposed to an antigen.
Yes.
That's it. And in this case, we don't even know if the antigen is the
cause of such a syndrome.
Or you see, HIV is one particular antigen.
Right.
There are thousands of antigens that have the same structure, can elicit the same